Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 10 o'clock here in the morning, Saturday morning, September the 4th. I'm happy to be here. This is Worldwide Epidemic of Child Abuse and Human Rights Abuses, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and the chat room is open if anybody would like to come and sit in there. I'm just going to be reading about and talking about some stuff that I've seen just this week coming into my inbox from all the different sources that I have that anyone can find actually out there regarding what's happening around the world, with child abuse and human rights abuses, right? So, you have to listen at your own discretion. Topics of abuse are very sensitive, and, you have to know what's good for you to listen to. So please listen at your own discretion. And, it's just wanted to include one show a week, on the whole international scope of what's happening out there, worldwide, this is just such a huge issue, and it's not just North America. It's not just one country or two countries here and there. This is a worldwide situation, and even worse in most countries, in the underdeveloping countries who they just don't have the resources. They don't have the programs set up to help people, and we see the situations are just so dire, really, out there for those people. And in North America, at least we have some laws in place, and we have some people who are willing to stand up and back those laws, and we have people who are advocating for child rights, human rights all the time, and it's still happening here too. But at least we have some recourse. We have the laws and the courts, and people are trying to make it to make this world a better place here, especially in North America. But around the world, we just see so much bad stuff going on, and there's no protection for these people whatsoever. And you think about, there's no protection for the adults, so there's no protection for the children, right? Absolutely none. I mean, even in countries where they say that they do honor the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and this and that, right? Whether it's being upheld or not, is a big issue. And a lot of times the laws within their own countries around the world, there's laws in place, but whether they're upheld or not is another thing. And so that's why, North America, really, thank God, I'm so grateful to be here and living and being able to enjoy life here in North America, because I tell you, in other countries, even if the laws are there, they're not being upheld. And at least here, we do have some recourse. We have the police departments we can call. Sometimes people slip through the cracks, sadly enough. Sometimes justice is just not served properly, and people don't do time or the amount of time that they should, and things like this, regarding, human rights abuses, child abuse, and such, domestic violence situations, and et cetera, But around the world, there's no protection for anyone in a lot of these countries, and, what are we going to do about it? It's just absolutely horrible. These people are just like you and me. They have families, they have goals and dreams, and they'd like to see their children live and survive. And sad enough, with the situation going on around the world with, some people not getting the food that they need, because there's food on this planet for every single person, but the different countries, withhold the food from their people and don't allow their people any medical assistance, or, there's resources here for everyone. It's just that, certain countries do not want the general population to survive, so they don't allow the food to get through. They don't allow the medical help to get there, the aid. You know what I mean? So it's so sad, because billions and billions of dollars are being pumped into these situations that are going on in the world, and yet the people are still starving. The people are still. It's because the governments are hoarding the food, and they're hoarding the medical supplies, and they're keeping the UN, and they're keeping the rest of the world out so that they can manipulate and misuse their people. So this is really sad. It's going to take a real change in the way that people see the situation, and it's going to take people within these other countries to stand up and get rid of their governments, and wait for those people to die off, and get some more educated people in there to start a new government for those countries who will try to uphold the laws and try to protect the people, right? So it's so sad to see what's going on, and I just want to include one show a week on what's happening out there in the world. And this one article this morning that I found, it's actually from yesterday, came in from Iran, IRIN. It's a daily selection of IRIN Middle East reports. And IRIN, is Humanitarian News and Analysis, UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. So this is where I got this article, and I just have these popping into my inbox all the time. I just signed up for the web alerts and whatnot. So it says Global Spotlight on Violence Against Children. So I'm just going to read from this, right? I'm reading right from the article. Dakar, 3rd of September 2010, IRIN. It says after her first year in the job, the UN Special Representative on Violence Against Children, Marta Santos Pais, told IRIN her major achievement has been to bring violence against children out into the open. She says here, quote unquote, today talking about violence against children is less taboo. Years back, we would not have had the discussions we are having now, she told IRIN at a conference highlighting violence against children held in Accra, capital of Ghana, on September the 2nd. Between 133 million and 275 million children experience violence at home every year, and most of whom live in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, according to the 2006 UN study on violence against children. And it says that's 133 million to 275 million children experience violence in the home every year. That's most of whom live in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. That's terrible. It says the Special Representative of the Secretary General will pursue 4 priorities in the next 2 years: to see legislation prohibiting all forms of violence against children passed in more countries. Awesome. I hope they can do it. Gather more data on violence against children. Set up better counseling networks for child victims of violence. And push all governments to follow the plan to eliminate violence against children set out in 2006. So they're still working on it. This is something I've been following and something that I've been interested in, child rights, human rights, for a long time. And, I certainly hope they can do it, and it's going to take everyone around the world to make this happen. So children need to start trusting that when they complain about violence, they will not be ignored, which means setting up better complaint systems and follow-up response units in schools and other institutions, said Santos Pais. And, when they complain about violence, especially if it's within their own family units or homes, they could just be killed, because in most of those countries, they don't have anything set up where the parents can't kill the children or the family can't kill the children. These children's lives are just, they're at the hands, even here in North America, we know that this is happening every day. But over there, here at least, we see some of these parents getting busted, thank God, and doing time. Whereas over in those countries, they can just kill whatever children they want. And then they just pop out some more and kill them too, right? They can just do whatever they want. There's nobody looking in to say, oh, you can't do that, that's against the law. And I know some countries actually try to protect their children and, will bring people up, into courts and try to deal with them, but in the meantime, the situation is just so much worse out there, especially in Asia and different places around the world where there's just no rights, especially for women and children, right? It says here, laws protecting children from violence should be made part of the Constitution or enacted as separate legislation. We need to move from planning to implementation, she stressed. So far, only 29 countries have passed such laws, with Tunisia and Kenya the only African countries to do so. So there's only 2 countries in Africa that have, gone along with it and passed these laws, right? It's 2 countries out of 54 or something like that. Africa has 54 countries in it, or 52 or 54, something like that. It says, we know very little still about violence in children. We speak about millions of children affected by violence, but in most countries we don't have details about the most vulnerable children, those abandoned in the street, in institutions, children affected by HIV/AIDS, or those who receive no social structure support, she told IRIN. And Ghana's Minister of Sports and Youth, Akua Sena Dansua, told IRIN that all along I thought the Children's Act in our Constitution was enough to protect children. And until now, she had not understood why a specific law would be needed. Now she plans to get one passed. So this is just the thing. These people, when they grow up in these countries, they grow up with this. They grow up with this violence. They grow up seeing this horrific stuff being done to people, and so it's part of their life. It's part of their culture. They don't know, pretty much any different, that there should be laws passed, that there should be, justice for these children, and also, retribution for the people that are committing these heinous crimes against children. And if they grow up like that, you see multi-generations of growing up like that, especially in other countries where there's no education, there's no news, there's no talk about it, there's no books written on it. They can't read, most of those people anyway. Even if they could read, there's no books on it over there in their countries. They don't have the information. Do you know what I mean? So they live like that, and you can imagine, put yourself in their shoes, isolated within your own communities of people who are living sort of a certain way, and you're going to think that that's the way life is if you don't know any different. It's not like they have television screens running, all over the place saying, oh, we got to stop violence against children, don't hurt your children, watch out for the children. There's nobody doing that. And so people, when they grow up in a certain way and they never see anything else, of course that's all they're going to know. And so that's why education is so important. Education is actually the key as far as I'm concerned. The key to solving these problems, the key to stopping human rights abuses, child abuse, worldwide. And I really believe it's going to take education to do it. It's what we need over here. So many people over here in North America just don't want to know about it. They don't want to see what's happening out here to these children, but, yet the headlines roll in every day with factual cases of abuse against parents every single day, and caregivers and other relatives, other children, child sexual predators, you name it. And even in our own countries, we have people that just would prefer to bury their heads in the sand and pretend it's not happening, so they can go off to the mall and do their shopping and not have to think about what a horrible life that child has and how sad it is for that child who's dead or in the hospital, or this woman who's been beaten by her husband, or a man who's been clobbered by his wife, or all these different situations, right? Child sexual predators and getting hold of children and molesting them and doing these terrible things to them. People just prefer to stick their head in the sand and just go on about their business because nobody wants to deal with it. And sadly enough, people that do that generally were not ever victimized, and so they don't feel the need to, they don't feel the pressures involved with being a victim, or a survivor of child abuse, or a survivor of sexual assault, a survivor of rape, a survivor of marital abuse, so they don't feel, why should they get involved? It's not part of their world, you know what I mean? So they should just be counting their lucky stars, or praying to God and thanking God, whatever they believe, that they are not and have not ever had to experience that, because if you have, then you would understand the urgency of why it's so necessary to change this. And so that's why it's so important for people to get involved, whether you were abused as a child or not, or whether you've ever been in a domestic violence situation or not, or whether or not you were ever raped or not, to get involved and stand up for human rights, because we need everyone's voice, right? So important. So, I have a good friend in the chat room. Hello there, good morning. And, this is just the thing. It's absolutely horrible what's happening out here. I wanted to look at another article, and this is on female genital mutilation in Indonesia, right? And this came in from Iran on September the 2nd, and it's Indonesia, female genital mutilation persists despite the ban. And it says Jakarta, September the 2nd, 2010. Though the Indonesian government banned female genital mutilation, cutting FGM/C 4 years ago, experts say religious support for the practice is more fervent than ever, particularly in rural communities. Well, that's because of the ignorance and the lack of education. It says a lack of regulation since the ban makes it difficult to monitor. But medical practitioners say that female genital mutilation remains commonplace for women of all ages in this emerging democracy of 240 million, the world's largest Muslim nation. That's Indonesia. Although not authorized by the Quran, the practice is growing in popularity. With increased urging of religious leaders, baby girls are now losing the top or part of their clitoris in the name of faith, sometimes in unsanitary rooms with tools as crude as scissors. This is the thing here. This is not right. It says, they fear that if the female genital mutilation persists, gets more outspoken support from religious leaders, it will increase even more. They found that in their latest research that not only female babies are being circumcised, but also older women. So it's affecting not just children, but women as well. It says, while the procedure in Indonesia is not as severe as in parts of Africa and involves cutting less flesh, it still poses a serious health concern. Even a small wound on the genitals can lead to sexual, psychological, and physical problems, Dorsa said. And Indonesia forbade health officials from the practice in 2006 because they considered it a useless practice that could potentially harm women's health. However, the ban, the ban was quickly opposed by the Indonesian Ulema Council, the highest Islamic advisory body in Indonesia. So in March this year, the Nahdlatul Ulama, the country's largest Muslim organization, issued an edict supporting female genital mutilation and cutting, though a leading cleric told the UN estimated 40 million followers not to cut too much. Right? It's like, oh, just a little bit, just cut a little bit. What difference does it make how much they're cutting? They're using unsanitary tools in unsanitary situations. They're, imposing this on women and children, on girls, and making them feel that there's something wrong with them. Right? Automatically, you would feel that there's something wrong with your body, and if you don't get that done, then you're just not one of them, and how could you go, religiously, right? They're just thinking, how could God be pleased with you if you don't go through with this female genital mutilation, right? And I mean, this is just horrible, right? What's happening to these people, and a lot of them die from these infections, and if they don't die, they end up very sick, because infection sets in, and it just messes with their bodies. And I think it's just, for me, I don't understand it. I don't understand why, it's not even part of the Quran. So why they're doing it, it's just a man-made religion thing. It's like, it would be as if if one religious group out there said, okay, just in the name of God, we're going to have to all cut off our right pinky. And so everybody who doesn't cut off their right pinky finger is just not going to be pleasing God. It's a man-made thing, say. It has nothing to do with the Quran or the Bible or anything else, right? So, it's just man-made, and look how many people are going along with it. Like, this is absolutely crazy. And it says it is against human rights, said Maria Ulfa Ansher, a women's rights activist and former chair of the women's wing of the NU. For women, there is absolutely no benefit and advantage. It says changing perceptions. Female genital mutilation and cutting traditionally exists as a sign of chastity, a symbolic practice performed by shamans or local healers who used crude methods such as rubbing and scraping. With shamans largely falling out of favor, the religious are turning to midwives who rely more on cutting instead. Midwives don't know what they are doing. They are never taught the practice at school, so they do the same with girls as with boys. They cut, Aincher said. And during the 32-year Suharto dictatorship, outspoken religious expression was discouraged. But since his fall in 1998, people started looking for their religious identity, with stricter interpretations of Islam being adopted by scores of municipalities. More Indonesian Muslim women wear a headscarf now, claiming it more acceptable than it was 15 years ago. Forbidden but unregulated. The 2006 ban prohibited female genital mutilation and cutting, but in practice there is no oversight. And see, that's just the thing. They put these laws in place, right? These bans, these laws in place, but then of course who's going to uphold them? If the people don't uphold the laws, then of course it's not going to happen. It's the same with child abuse here in the United States. I mean, we all know that child abuse is illegal. I don't know how a person could just not know that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you could be on the planet for any length of time, especially growing up in North America, and not realize that any violence towards a child or anything that causes harm or injury on purpose to a child is against the law. It's illegal. It's like you can't go out and beat on your neighbor. I mean, you can't walk over to your neighbor's house, start calling them names, punch them to the ground, kick them around, beat on them, and tie them up and burn them, and then send them to their room for being bad. Right? Your neighbor would be calling the police. You'd be up on assault charges. You'd be up on all kinds of charges. This is just the thing, right? So why people think that they can do this to their children, I don't know. But see, this is the whole issue. What people will not uphold, it just won't happen. So laws are only as good as the people that will uphold them. And so even in North America, Canada, the United States, today, we have a lot of people who do not want to uphold the laws. And then we have a whole system of societal, beliefs and opinions that, it's okay to discipline your child. Go ahead, beat the crap out of them, burn them, kill them, rape them, whatever you want to do, that's fine. People are not thinking clearly. You can't walk over to your neighbor's house and and rape an adult neighbor, it's against the law. So why people don't realize that that's against the law, raping a child? It's the same. It's actually, to me, it's worse because, I mean, that poor child has no way to protect themselves. But, you think rape is rape, and rape is wrong. Abuse is wrong. So whether, why people think that, they know and understand the laws as far as adults go. Oh, we can't go over there and hurt that adult person across the road because we could be brought up on charges because it's against the law, and yet they would do this to their children and think that it's perfectly okay. It's a lack of education. It's a lack of people actually caring enough to think about it for 2 seconds and having the brain capacity, the brain cells to actually realize that, this is actually not right to beat on a child or to hurt a child, to rape a child, to sexually use a child, to curse at a child. Verbal abuse is just as hard. You can't walk into an office somewhere and start verbally assaulting someone without being brought up on some sort of charges, right? That's a fact because it's abuse. So why parents think that they can do this to their children? And this is North America. This is why I'm bringing this up, because North America, with the education that we have, we still have a lot of extremely ignorant people walking around in North America today. So you think about worldwide, then you got a real problem on your hands, because worldwide the ignorance levels are just, oh my God, it's a lack of education is all it is. And people need to start getting the education and start getting the information and start standing up for human rights and child rights, and raise their voices, because this is absolutely unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. So back to the article here. A midwife at a state hospital in Jakarta told IRIN on condition of anonymity, being anonymous, that she cuts newborn girls. When mothers ask me to do it, I tell them about the upsides and downsides of circumcision, she says. But when asked to explain the benefits, she declined further comment. According to Yarsi University's research, most incidents happen in secret, sometimes unhygienic, backstreet operating rooms, creating a big risk of infection, sort of like these places that do abortions, illegal abortions and whatnot. It's all substandard and might not be the most, hygienic situation, right? And a lot of, times these legal abortions, over the many thousands of years that women have been having them, many women die because of it, because of the infection, and it was just not done right. It was a botched job. So you can imagine some of these children, if it's a botched job, the infection can set in, and they can get very, very sick. They could die. They could have all kinds of problems with their sexuality because of it, because it scars them, and, they just feel lesser than, and they feel, that their bodies were mutilated, because really all it is mutilation, female genital mutilation. I mean, think about it. It's mutilation. So, and it's not like they're stepping up volunteering for it. Now, some of the older adult women might be, because they feel the pressure from the people around them, the community, the religious authority figures in their area. They might feel that they have to do it. But children, if they don't know anything about female genital mutilation, why would they step up for it? It's like, hey, yeah, sign me up. No, I don't think so. Little children don't know anything about this stuff, and they don't need to know, and they don't want to know. You know what I mean? They just want to be kids. So why this? This just makes me sick that these people are this backwards and this mentally ill, as far as I'm concerned, to do this stuff. So that tells you how many mentally ill people there are out there in the world. Like just in Indonesia, 260 million in mentally ill people. What are we going to do with those people? You know what I mean? Well, they're all going to have to die off, and a lot of education is going to have to come into those countries, right? And I mean, I'm not saying everybody should kill each other, but in the meantime, look how many people is going to suffer because of this. So all these older generations are going to have to die off, and we're going to have to get some serious education out to people, so that these young generations coming up, babies right now, will be coming up and getting some education. And, they don't have to change their religious beliefs. I mean, if they want to be a Muslim, whatever. If they want to be a Hindu, whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever brings peace to their heart, But the whole idea that the Quran does not even back up this female genital mutilation. It doesn't say in there anything about it, actually. This has nothing to do with the spirituality of the Muslim. It has everything to do with a man-made rule that people are backing up. This is mental illness as far as I'm concerned, and it really needs to be stopped, right? What are you going to do? The world is full of sick people. So it says the demand for female genital mutilation cutting makes it hard to control the practice, said Minister of Women's Empowerment Linda Amalia Sari Gumalar. And that is why we encourage female circumcision to be medicalized and practiced by trained health personnel to avoid further harm. So, they're saying, at least it would be done in a sanitary place with people who were trained and knew how to do it, and maybe some follow-up care to make sure there's no infection setting in. If they're going to continue to do it anyway, at least make it, some sort of regulatory, regulations on it. Gumalar is working with the Ministry of Health to make an unsafe practice safer. Even though it is outlawed and has been condemned by a large number of treaties and conventions and ratified by most governments of countries where female genital mutilation and cutting is present, says the development dismays women's rights fighter Ansher. I would advise not to circumcise your daughters at all, Ansher said. If women are circumcised, people believe they become more beautiful and not as wild and will make men more excited in bed. For women themselves, they don't get any excitement at all. It is hard to tell what impact, if any, government action will have on people like grandmother Didi Jafar, who had never heard of the ban but does not like it. She says, that is so sad because Muslims have to be clean, she said, sitting outside her home with her 10-month-old granddaughter who was cut 8 months ago. Jafar noted that every woman in her family has undergone the procedure. Even if it is forbidden, we still have to find someone to do it. It is obligatory. We should always try to find someone to do it for us because we have to. This is what this grandmother said. Well, that's because think about what kind of an education that grandmother's had. She might be 40 years old, and we're not talking 60, 70-year-old grandparents here. Back in those countries, they start early, man, and because they're fighting their survival is they don't live that long in those countries. If they live to be 60, they're ancient, and so they don't their life expectancy in those countries is a lot less than around the world, right? In many places around the world. So, we might be talking about somebody who's 38, 40 years old sitting there with no education. Their family never had any education. The family before them, all the generations never had any education. What can you expect? What can we expect, right? No education, complete ignorance, and just going on, generational practices. This is just stupid. And the thing is without education, it will never change, and that's the big problem, right? That's why I really, I like to promote education. I volunteer also. I'm a Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and volunteer position. I just love it. But I also volunteer for quite a few other groups. Canadian Women for Women Afghanistan. I volunteer with the CHF, the Canadian Hunger, formerly known as the Canadian Hunger Foundation. I volunteer with the CAN-IOF, the Canadian International Learning Foundation out of Ottawa, Canada, and the Canadian International Learning Foundation, they work to fund schools in other countries that there's just no education, right, or no chance for education unless they work together with FIDA, the Canadian International Development Group, CEDA, and so they work sort of hand in hand with these, Canadian government, groups who fund education. So they have schools in Kandahar, they have schools in Uganda, and they're working on getting education to these people. Want education, believe it or not, and they want to come up with the rest of the world. They're tired of seeing what's going on in their countries, and they want some change. They're willing to put their lives on the line to go to school, and the teachers are willing to put their lives on the line to actually teach in the schools because their lives are threatened every day. So, it's just awesome, and I hope everybody will support groups like that who are doing some good work around the world, right, to try to help bring up the level of education and the standard of living for these people so that we can all, because this is the whole issue. Think about it. It's just a lack of education. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We got a minute left. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, and I'll be back on as well next week. You can check my show page. Have yourself a great weekend. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Check out Dreamcatchers for Abused Children's website at http://dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And you can get the all the information there. The child abuse headlines rolling in every day. They're posted by Sandra Potter. It talks about what we do and what our plans are, what our goals are, what our mission is, to stop child abuse and to help survivors to achieve a full recovery as much as we can. So, and get the information on how to, learn to recognize the signs and symptoms of all the different types of abuse. And then take a look around at the children in your own life and make sure that they're not being abused, and get people some help, right? Because this is the issue. It's going to be up to you. It's going to be up to me. We all have to do it. We have to get involved to change this world, to make this world a better place, right? And we have to start in our own homes in North America, and the rest of the world. So take care, everybody, and have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.